What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. This is part of a series where I'm focusing on Academy Award Best Picture nominees from a certain year and ranking them from worst to best. Done such years in the past such as the 1990s, 2000s, 2010s, 2020s, and currently working my way through the 1980s. I've done 1980, 81, 82, 83, and you clicked on this video, so you know this time around I am doing the 1984 Academy Award Best Picture nominees and ranking them from worst to best. Now, there were 5 Best Picture nominees this year, so I'll be ranking it from 5 being the worst to 1 being the best, and of course, my humble opinion. And as always, keep in mind, my list will differ from yours, and that's what's great about film. It is subjective, so therefore, I am very much still looking forward to seeing your ranking for these 1984 Academy Award Best Picture nominees in the comment section down below. But guys, enough exposition. Let's get started. So kicking things off, by number 5, we have Places in the Heart, which stars Sally Field. This is a film that, it's a slice-of-life film, which you'll start to notice if you're watching a lot of these Best Picture nominees from the 70s and 80s. A lot of them are slice-of-life films where it's honing in on something that you don't really see too often. And in this case, it's your everyday people that you really don't see that often. And I'm saying that in a good way. I think that it's interesting that Places in the Heart has that disposition where it's like, hey, we're going to focus on these everyday people. And I'm glad that they did, even though the film as a whole is quite dry. And by that, I mean that when I was watching it, it was a very passive experience. Like, I really wasn't, like, entertained per se. But I did sit back and I did appreciate the filmmaking aspects, even though I did feel some of it was quite dry. Sally Fields was, of course, incredible. And, of course, the everyday approach I also really did like. But overall, it's a film that I feel as though I'm only going to watch one time, because even as I'm talking about it now, I'm like, yeah, it was okay. But that's why it's my number 5. Next up, my number 4, this is another film I'll probably only watch once, and that is A Passage to India. So this is a film that, right away, it is problematic. You have Alec Guinness, who many of you will know played Obi-Wan Kenobi in the original Star Wars. He is, how do I put this, brown-faced in this film, and it's very distracting. Like, the film seems like it's pretty accurate in terms of its representation of India, but then you'll get to a shot of Alec Guinness, and you're like, oh no, dear Lord in heaven. So it's just one of those things we're watching, I was like, oh, man, and I know some people would argue that, hey, he was technically brown-faced in Lawrence of Arabia, but I would like to argue that it's much less distracting. I'm not saying that in Lawrence of Arabia it's okay. It is something that, knowing that it is Alec Guinness in Lawrence of Arabia, it is something that it is problematic. But versus A Passage to India, it's like right away, it's like, that is Alec Guinness. That is so distracting. That's not, someone that's from India. It's like, oh my goodness. But overall, the film, in terms of the filmmaking itself, it's very well shot. It's got a neat score. Acting is really good, but it's one of those films that isn't really stick to your ribs. It's not like David Lean's other work, such as, like I mentioned, Lawrence of Arabia, Bridge and River Kwai, where it's like, it's stick to your ribs filmmaking. This is more like, I appreciate it, but from afar. I like it slightly more than Places in the Heart, but I can see other people really, really digging this film. But for me, it's quite long. Again, Alec Guinness and brown face is problematic, and yeah, that's my number 4. Next up, my number 3. These next 3 all are rock solid to incredible. My number 3 is A Soldier's Story. You can tell right off the bat that this is the same director that did In the Heat of the Night. And I mean that in the best way possible, in that it's a very well-crafted film. It's very insightful. It's a really interesting character study. Incredible performances, really good cinematography, and just an overall very well-crafted film that I can already see myself revisiting and it getting even better. As it stands, rock solid film. If you've been sleeping on this film, I would highly recommend you check this out, because, again, I wasn't really familiar with this film until I, again, was ranking these Academy Award Best Picture nominees. And I'm glad that it all of a sudden came on my radar, because it is really good. And yeah, that's why it's my number 3. Next up, my number 2. This is a film that any other year would be my number 1. My number 2, we have The Killing Fields. So this is a film that has been on my radar for well over a decade. I have always seen the library, like at my local library, the DVD, and the covers always intrigued me, but not enough to where I was going to check it out, because I heard that it was very hard to watch. And for the life of me, I wish that I came across this film sooner, because it is a really, really good film. Yes, it's hard to watch for sure, but that is by design. It throws you right into the action, and you really get to know these characters through the actions and the events that ensue. And that's something to me that I think that can work at times in other films, but then other times, for the most part, doesn't work in biopics. But here, it works seamlessly. This is a terrific film that, again, any other year, I would say give it Best Picture. It is a terrific film. I look forward to watching it at some point down the line, although I don't know about rewatchability value because, again, it is quite hard to watch. But it is a film that I feel as though everyone should watch at least once. And, yeah, it's my number 2. Now, for my number 1, I mentioned that any other year, The Killing Fields would get my number 1 slot. The reason why I didn't is because my number 1 came out. This is a film that's one of my favorite films of all time. And my number 1, we have Amadeus. So yeah, I own Amadeus on Blu-ray. This is the director's cut. And I will say this, I know the theatrical cut's on DVD and then the director's cut is on the Blu-ray. You can watch either one. You can watch the 160-minute theatrical cut or the 180-minute director's cut. Doesn't matter. Both versions are still incredible. This is one of the best films of all time. I know some people say it's not historically accurate, but upon looking it up, there are a lot of elements about this film that are quite accurate to Amadeus. And the music's terrific. The cinematography is great. The directing is top-notch. The humor, the acting, the pacing, everything about this film works. This is one of the Best Picture winners of all time, in my personal opinion. And again, the 80s, 1984 specifically, it had some pretty good nominees, but all the other films didn't have a shot. This was a very, very well-deserved Best Picture winner. So happy it won Best Picture. And again, if you've been sleeping on this film, highly recommend you checking it out. It should be watched by everyone at least once. And I've seen it many times. But yeah, guys, that is my ranking for the 1984 Academy Award Best Picture nominees. Let me know your ranking for the 1984 Academy Award Best Picture nominees down below. And as always, I really do appreciate you guys for watching. Don't forget the subscription, notification bell, follow me on Letterboxd, and I will catch you guys later.